Hello everyone and welcome back to Agent Nagash channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar, and in this video I'm going to tell you my thoughts to the return of Warhammer Fantasy, which Game Workshop has released a little hint to what they're going to do a few weeks ago. Now, so my initial thoughts to this are the return of the old world. Now, before I go into everything, I will say I love the old world as much as the next guy. Purely because the lore and the character building and everything was fantastic. However, I don't think that this is going to be a good idea. Mainly because it will split partly some of the player base. And I don't mean to say this as in like a panic thing, everyone's going to drop Age of Sigmar and go back to Fantasy, because that will not happen at all. But places like where I'm from, as an example, most people who play Warhammer in my local area play 40k. The ones who do play Age of Sigmar will stick to Age of Sigmar. They won't go back to Fantasy because they enjoy Age of Sigmar too much. However, there are places that I know, some of you guys have told me about them in other countries, different cities, all that sort of thing, where there's very few Age of Sigmar players, like literally just one or two, and they prefer Fantasy. So as soon as this comes back, they will go back to Fantasy, and that's the sort of fear what people have. And to a point, I understand, and like I say, that's why I think that this is not a great idea, because it will split the player base. And this is not going to come around until, I think they said, about 2 or 3 years for this to actually happen. And my other thoughts about this is I don't think, basically just getting all the negative thoughts out the way first, get them out of the way and then try and talk about the positives. I don't believe that they're going to bring back Tomb Kings and Bretonia, and I know that's probably what a lot of people are excited about, but I don't think they would do it. But 2-3 years is a long time in the future when we're talking about a teaser for a release that Games Workshop has given us. So we can't say for certain, but I don't believe those armies will come back, unfortunately. I don't suspect them to. And the other thing about this is because before they told us that they're going to revisit the old world, they also told us, everything that comes around goes around, and that even includes square bases. I don't believe that this game will be square base required. What I believe, so when I say that, I mean I don't believe you're going to have to rebase your models. So that's an absolutely stupid idea. What I believe it's going to be is on movement trays. So when everything's on movement trays, then we look at maybe this is going to be a larger scale game, which what some Warhammer Fantasy was, and it's maybe going to be more of an apocalyptic style. We compare it to 40k, play Apocalypse compared to normal. It's a lot different. And then this will be set in the old world and everything else that comes along with that. And they did do a strong comparison between the Warhammer, just Warhammer the Old World, as it's going to be called by the looks of things, and that of Warhammer Horus Heresy as the prequel to Warhammer 40k, as Warhammer the Old World will be the prequel to Age of Sigmar, as obviously we all know. And that could be very interesting. The only difference that I can see here, and I'm not an expert on the lore as much as some of you guys are, so correct me if I'm wrong, but with Warhammer, the Old World, Fantasy, we know, we've got the story right until the end anyway. So with Horus Heresy, the story is developing all the time. Of course, we know what happens in the future, but that's still that bridge we're still that gap that's still being bridged, which is fantastic in the novels, whereas Fantasy, not really the case. So this is just going to be a weighted game. It's not going to expand on the story by the looks of things, because obviously it turned into Age of Sigmar. So it could just be so the way I look at it is it's going to be a rule book and movement trays to regiment your army, and to be able to play large scale games set in the old world. So that's what I believe this is going to be. And if what I believe this is going to be is correct, I don't know why this will take 2 or 3 years to do. I'm not a rules designer, I'm not a game designer, so I don't know if it takes that long to come up with rules for this, but they would have already been thinking about this for a while. But that shouldn't be how long it takes to come up with a rule book for a new game system. But like I say, I don't know. I may be completely wrong about that, and you guys might tell me, yeah, it takes about 2-3 years to come up with a rule book for a game, but I doubt it. So if it is going to take that long, and that length of time is not necessary to create new rules for that game, Warhammer the Old World, what else are they going to bring along to it? Because if, I don't know, they can come up with rules for a new game in, let's say, a year, that leaves them with like 2 extra years. So then if that is the case, I could be completely wrong by me just thinking it's going to be movement trays in a book. It could be, who knows, Betonia and Tomb Kings, like I say, I don't believe they're coming back. They could come back, who knows, they could expand on things in the world that was. The interesting thing though, is called Warhammer the Old World. Now they might have just called it that because that's a very a strong name that everyone who plays Warhammer will recognise that of being fantasy. However, if they're being quite specific with the Old World, obviously that's only a certain part of the world that was. And the reason why I bring that up is because if they're going to put this in the whole of Warhammer Fantasy, you could explore things like Araby and sort of these different cultures that didn't really get much of a model range, or any model range really. So it would be quite cool if they explored those different parts of it. And I imagine they will do, because, if it is just the Old World, then they're cutting out, lizard men, dark elves, even things like the Vampire Coast, obviously the High Elves, and so on, so on, so on, so on. And that is essentially it. It's just speculation of what could be. Plenty of people have already done it on YouTube and everything, but I just wanted to let you guys know my thoughts about it. What I'm going to do now as well, I'm going to read through the article, what they put on the community site, and they put this on the 15th of the 11th, 2019, so a couple of weeks back as well, so not brand new news, but in case you haven't read this, I'll read along. So it's called Old World, so a new Warhammer. You'll never believe what we're working on. The studio had to tell us twice. So Warhammer the Old World. Yeah, for really reals. In the deepest dungeons of Warhammer Studio, the Council of the Wise have convened, and ancient forges have been relit, and work has already begun. So far, we've made the logo. Next up, everything else. You get the idea. This is a long way off. Years, more than 2, like 3 or more. Definitely not soon. So going back to what I said about, saying 2 or 3 years, it's actually like 3 or 4 years. So maybe it's not just going to be a book of movement trays, but we'll see. And then it goes, obviously this is really exciting news for all of us. And just like with the Sisters of Battle, we'll keep you updated with more news as the project unfolds. For those of you who don't know, in 2015, Warhammer, the game of fantasy battle, changed forever insofar as Archaon destroyed the world. Classic Archaon. So everything we knew of the old world collapsed into the void of chaos and infinite possibility. From the Tomdus storm came the mortal realms, heralding a new dawn of unending war in the Age of Sigmar. So the story we've all heard a million times before, essentially. And then there's a lovely picture, will be on the video. It goes boom. So then it says, from the reforged primal soup, ethical energies of the old world rose wonders we could never have imagined. Armies of ghosts, fleets of ether-powered aircraft, greenskin brutes, the size of horses, and flying sharks. The heroes, villains, warriors, and monsters of Warhammer Age of Sigmar represent the best range of fantasy miniatures in the world. Beloved of a passionate global gaming community, and over the past 4 years, Warhammer Age of Sigmar had become by far the most successful fantasy game ever. And yet the old world whispers from ages past. With its siren song, we grow misty-eyed, and that memory of long-lost heroes and glorious kingdoms are laid to ruin, and of mighty champions whose sagas are sung no more. And of course, much of the lore of the mortal realms has its roots in the world that was, with some of its most venerable denizens being the very same that fought across those war-torn kingdoms, along with a small selection of Joe's magical artifacts. The Old World is to Warhammer Age of Sigmar as Horus Heresy is to Warhammer 40k, the bedrock of lore from which mortals rose to godhood, and legends were forged, and like the Horus Heresy, seeing those mythic heroes in action has an undeniable appeal, as does recreating the glorious armies of previous echoes. An exciting proposition for hobbyists and gamers alike. And now we have a dedicated team in the Warhammer studio beginning the work of bringing all that awesome back to the tabletop. Exciting stuff. If you're itching to jump into the Old World right now, you can. As there's a fantastic selection of games, blah, 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 blah. Please like our Facebook, all that sort of stuff. So, the other cool thing to say about this is it will have a lot of traction, the Old World, because of how successful Warhammer Total War has been, or Total Warhammer, I think is pronounced correctly. As that's a fantastic game. I play that a lot, not as much as some people who absolutely love the game, but I've put in many hundreds of hours into that game when I can, and it's fantastic. Probably it's one of the best computer games I've ever played, let's say, and they do the Old World really good justice there, apart from Siege Battles. So what I will say about this, and also refreshing my memory by reading through the article again, it's interesting that talking about if Tomb Kings and Bretonnia is going to come back. I don't know. I just don't want people to get their hopes up. However, they do say, recreating the glorious armies of a previous, Echo and stuff like that. So it maybe hints, and then when the memes and stuff they did for this when they announced it, there's one where there's that, the standing one with that woman's, pointing, being really angry and upset, and then there's that cat hiding behind that, table sitting on a chair, but they recreated it as Archaon pointing at Cetra, I believe, saying I blew you up, and then Cetra hiding behind that table and that chair instead of the cat. So, they're hinting at these old dead armies maybe coming back. So, maybe a bit more positive note that could happen. So yeah, that's basically it, guys. That's all I really wanted to say in this one. Just give you my thoughts on it. Now, what I don't want is, I'm sure this won't happen anyway, because all you guys are very civilized, but I don't want anyone to do arguments are fine and all that sort of thing, healthy argument, but no one whining about the Old World in the comments or anything like that. And what I will say is that if people think that, like I say, I think this will split the player base, but if people think that, Fantasy was a lot better than Age of Sigmar as a game and all that, and Age of Sigmar is way outside Fantasy. So the change from Warhammer Fantasy to Age of Sigmar was definitely a good change, as it helps us as the hobbyists as well, because the better Games Workshop does, the better we do as well in our hobby. It's just a shame that it was to lose all that lovely world building that had been created in the Old World, but the lore in Age of Sigmar is definitely getting better, and that's all I really want to say on that. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please like, subscribe and comment down below, as that massively does help the channel. I'd like to say a massive thank you to my subscribers as well, who, if it wasn't for them, like I say, it'd be a lot harder to bring you content, and there will be more and more content coming, don't you worry. This is just the first video, and just sort of I think this is the biggest news that we've had for Age of Sigmar Fantasy for a while. So that's why I wanted to cover it in this video today, and then we'll cover another subject when I make the next video. Okay guys, so thank you very much for watching this, and remember, until next time, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.